We're back. We're live. I've never actually done this, but I figured might as well do something we've never done before for a very special day. What is that occasion, you ask? Well, so long as everything goes well, on my way to work today, we will be crossing 250,000 miles. 250,000 miles in the old Chevrolet Silverado. For those who don't know, this is a 2005. Started its life out as a 1500 5.3 truck. Nice loaded interior. LT3, so leather and heated seats. All that fun stuff. Check engine light, just kidding. Or ABS light, and just kidding, it didn't come with that. But anyway, extended cab, 6.5 foot bed. Pretty typical truck setup. You're gonna sit there forever, dude. Okay, there you go. What you were waiting for. Pretty typical truck setup, and just a good kind of generic do everything truck. And with it, I did everything. So I bought this when I was 19. I don't know if you can hear my belt squeaking back there as well. It seems to do that every time now when it's wet, even though it's really new. But anyway, bought this when I was 19. I had a Ford Explorer, an '04 Ford Explorer. Nice little vehicle, but just for what I was doing and trying to haul, and my buddy and I were into like scrapping metal at the time, I needed a pickup truck, or at least really wanted one. It would make my life easier. So I was looking at F-150s. I was kind of a Ford man at that point, right? I had that Explorer, so I was looking at F-150s. And really what wound up happening was two things. Number one, the 5.4 liter 3-valve engines. Spark plug issues, the fuel injection control module, some of those issues just scared me a little bit. I really didn't want to have to try to learn how to fix those. You know, I was 19, I didn't know what I know now. And I didn't have as much money, right? So I just was a little bit concerned about that kind of stuff. So that was part of it. The other part of it was the prices on the Fords were notably higher, at least back then. So a 05-ish F-150 was 16, 17 grand, and an 05-ish Silverado was anywhere from, say, 11 to 13, depending on the mile. And I'm talking for like 70 to 100K on them. I had what I consider to be the ability to pay 11 to 13, not 15 up. I was making $10 an hour at the time. I was working for, landscaper type deal. I did eventually get an internship making 15 an hour, but I wasn't exactly, rolling in the dough, right? So I needed to purchase something that was truly affordable for me until I had gotten through college and built my life and got a full-time job. So the intent of this truck was to get myself through college. So I'd bought it with 81,000 miles. And I'd said to myself, all right, I'm commuting to college, so I need something decently reliable, but I'm still just mostly local and whatnot, so not a big deal. So I did that. I bought this thing. I commuted for 3 years. Yeah, I guess 3 years, right? When I was going to college. I put probably, I could look at my record, but I probably put 25, 30,000 miles on it by the time I was done with college. There we go. We're back. I don't know if you could hear anything through there, but anyway. And actually, I know that it had about 106, 107,000 on it when I ended college, because I went on a trip with one of my best friends, who's still my friend to this day, and 6,500 miles in 13 days in this old beast, and it had 13,000, I think, when we were done with the trip. So it was about 105, 106,000. So at that point, when I was out of college, by then I had already fallen in love with the truck, and I didn't want to get rid of it. So I had said to myself, originally, like I said, that this is going to be a kind of a, beginner truck for me. But as I got out of college, it turned into a continuous, started to do some renovations and stuff like that. So on that cross-country trip, I actually lost, my AC started breaking, so I lost the AC. Luckily it worked decent for the trip. So when I got home, I replaced the AC. That was like my first big project in this thing. Learned how to do all that, bought some tools for it. That was a cool experience, and that's kind of when I realized that I like working on cars. I had a little bit in the past, but I just hadn't been able to work on stuff to the degree that this thing forced me to because it had some breakages. So that was pretty cool. I then what was I gonna say? I was trying to thought. Oh, I then blew the transmission at 135. So I towed it down with my dad to a company called Level 10 Transmission in New Jersey. Mind you, I was like a year out of college. I hadn't really saved up tons of money and everything else yet. So it was a little bit stressful, the idea of just taking my truck and dumping, thousands and thousands of dollars on a transmission. But I had determined in my head that that was the smart decision. Look at that 6-liter, baby. It's like half throttle. I love the sound this thing makes. But anyway, I had determined in my head that that was going to be my best bet. Instead of buying a new truck, I could get some more life out of it. So I did that. Put the transmission in it. Drove it to really pretty trouble-free. I mean, little stuff here and there, bearings and brakes and the normal things you got to do. Maybe like brake lines at some point I did, stuff like that. But I drove this thing to 184,000 miles. And at that point, I had bought my camper that you've seen in other videos. And unfortunately, the camper really is the thing, in my opinion, that took its toll on this poor truck. And probably the reason that I'm not daily driving it to this day. So at 184, I had owned the camper for, probably 2,000-3,000 miles worth of towing. And I blew the rear end of the truck. So the old 10 bolt went bye-bye, pinion bearing went, and I had to get that replaced in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So company down there overcharged me, but they did do the job, seemingly correct. More on that later. But the rear end was fixed, and I kind of said to myself, well, we should probably be okay for a little while. And that's kind of where I was wrong. So from there on, I think between towing the camper and just the age, I started replacing everything. U-joints multiple times, the rear drive shaft yoke, the, random, I rebuilt the whole front end, and the motor wound up going at 222K, which, that's reasonable, but I put the 6-liter in it, and there's videos on that on the channel. So, just control module, all these lights are all burnt out. Just, really an onslaught of items started breaking, and I have lists, giant Excel spreadsheet of all the things I've done and all the money totaled up, and it's significant. There was a lot of things I had to do on this. For example, I did the ABS module years ago, and it needs it again. So I found out that, I don't know if it's because they're aftermarket parts or what it is, but things don't seem to hold up as long as the original OEM parts did. And you got to remember, they don't make OEM parts for a lot of this stuff. And if they do, they're just prohibitively expensive, because as much as you don't want to do the same job twice, if the part is a quarter of the cost and it still does last 80 to 100,000 miles, it kind of just makes financially more sense to do the job twice, at least when you're doing your own work, and it's an easy to get to part, right? Which in the case of a lot of these things it is. But on the flip side of that, if you're on a long distance road trip and one of those things breaks, doesn't really matter what it costs. The fact is you got to now replace it on a road trip. So that's a whole nother deal. But anyway, back to the good stuff. So that cross-country trip, like I said, did 6,500 miles. And I just realized I probably should have turned this sideways before I did the live stream. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We're just rambling here anyway, let's be honest. So, oh, yeah. So we did the trip, did about 33 states in that trip. I've taken my dog, a million places in this thing. Just a lot of good memories, right? A lot of camping trips. Then there's, there are some bad memories, like we started mentioning, with some of the breakages and stuff. But overall, for anyone who knows, for anybody who's a car person and has owned a vehicle for a long time, you develop a bit of a bond with it. I think, you wind up kind of, having like a connection with it, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, even if this thing were to, roll down a hill and catch fire, I'd be a little bit sad, right? Even though I have a new truck, wouldn't be thrilled about it. Thank you for your like and subscribe, by the way. I just noticed that. I am driving, so I'm not really looking at the screen too much. So if anybody logs in here and comments, I'll try to acknowledge it if I can. I just want to make sure I'm paying attention to the road and I don't total this thing out before I hit the 250K mark. We got 9 miles to go. I'll give you an update on that. We got 249, 991. So let's go. I will also give fair warning. I'm going to cut the live stream right when I hit 250 because I want to get a picture of it as well. So I'm probably, and I could screenshot this video, but I'd like to just get an actual picture. So I'll say my piece before that. You'll have heard me rambling long enough by then, trust me. But one thing I want to discuss too before we hit this milestone is a little bit more about the engine. So for those who don't know, and there is videos on the channel about it, I swapped the 6-liter LQ9 into this, which was a great, awesome, fantastic modification. Like, I wish these trucks came with it stock in more trim levels because it just tows better. The mileage is kind of the same. But the weight of the physical engine's the same, so you don't lose payload or anything, but you just get like a nice healthy power bump for not much disadvantage. The 5.3 is a great engine, but the 6-liter is just a better engine. I mean, it's just more powerful, right? And I think the reason they probably didn't do it is because they don't trust the transmission in a lot of applications, right? And maybe like the transfer case and rear end and all that stuff. But if you don't drive like an absolute monkey about it, you can kind of enjoy that extra power and not hurt the truck. If you're not foot to the floor all the time, especially towing, right? If you don't abuse it, you can get away with having a little extra power for a pretty long period of time. But anywho, when I put this engine in, that was a really cool learning experience. I mean, aside from trying to keep an old truck running, that's like something that a lot of people never get a chance in their life to do or care to do. And that was something that I always wanted to do. So to be able to put an engine in a truck that I've put so much time and effort into, it was just like a really meaningful experience, and it was relatively cheap. I had a core that I was able to obtain to return, so I was only $5-6 grand into the whole project with a bunch of auxiliary parts, gaskets and replacing little things here and there. So as of last year in the springtime, I had done the 6-liter, I had flushed out all the little bugs, I had rebuilt the front end. On paper, this truck was pretty darn new and ready to rock and roll. Well, unfortunately, and there's a short at least on this, but I didn't really make a whole full-length video, of course. But unfortunately, the truck caught on fire. Yes, you heard me correct. The truck caught on fire July 4th weekend, 2023. Long story short, the reason for that was because what we believe to be a defective transmission cooler line fitting on the side of the trans, which if you know Chevy, you know what those fittings look like. They're a questionable design in a lot of ways, although they do work decently well. But it allowed the line to blow off the side of the trans, dumping hot transmission fluid on an even hotter exhaust because I was towing the camper, and it just started on fire. I had 3 fire extinguishers. I was luckily able to save the truck from burning to the ground, but I mean, I was devastated. My freaking pride and joy that I spent so many dang hours on repairing over the years and putting the motor in and making all these memories literally went up in flames. And I, at that point, had no idea if like the transmission was burnt up inside due to the fire melting like the valve body. I mean, you just don't know, right? There's like a lot of stuff, sensitive things under a car that shouldn't be having flames touching them or heating up components around them. So I had to obviously get it towed because I had no transmission fluid. to a local shop in PA because I was dead center in the middle between upstate New York where I live and my parents' house in North Carolina. But it was in Chambersburg, PA. Took it to Robinson's Auto Body and Repair. Still forever in debt to those guys. Thank you, Eric, the mechanic who helped me fix the thing. But we tow it there. We get it on the lift. We deal with the fiery chaos of what happened. If you've ever seen a vehicle catch fire, it's never pretty. Luckily, I got super lucky and the wiring harnesses were very much intact. All of the kind of seals and gaskets on all the transmission and transfer case and stuff were intact. So we didn't have any huge problems there. So we just kind of cleaned up the wiring the best we could temporarily, jammed some transmission fluid in it, replaced that fitting, and we were off to the races. I took it for a 2-mile test drive without the camper, and at that point I said, you know what, if it's going to break, it's going to break. I hooked the camper up. At this point, I'm 3-4 hours delayed from my trip. I kid you not, I pull out onto the state routes, get to the interstate. As I hit the entrance ramp to I-81 South, I just put it to the boards and I said, if I'm going to blow this thing up, I want to do it now and not another freaking hour or 2 hours from now. And luckily, it not only made it there and then back home, it also made it on many more trips actually. And we had some other issues throughout the days, but overall, we did a pretty good job of moving that camper around. But I decided, with all the issues it was still having, and the fact that it had at the time 245,000 miles, that I needed to upgrade for my towing application, just buy something newer and heavier duty. I was over the truck's payload a little bit, well, a fair amount with the bike and the trailer tow. I had gotten a girlfriend last year, so I was adding payload and just people and more gear and all that kind of stuff. I just needed a truck that could handle it. So I wound up getting a 2500. I actually wound up going with a Ford. That's a whole story for another video. But we're at 249,998. So we're gonna hold the camera on the gauge cluster from here on out, since we're so close on mileage. And luckily, the beginning part of my commute here is very minimal traffic, so I can kind of do both. But yeah, overall, we've discussed some positives and negatives. We're 18 minutes into this video, so I said my piece. Would I do it all over again? Absolutely not. Or yes, sorry. I absolutely would. I love this truck. Love everything about it. Love what I've learned working on it. It's just it's been an absolute joy overall to own this truck and have this be my primary, daily driver for so many years. God, there's such a terrible glare, guys. There we go. 999. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to end the video when it hits 250. So, as always, thanks for watching. God bless America. And I will see you on the next one. It's a pretty cool day, guys. I've been waiting for this day for many, many years. Hoping we can... I guess I made my outro a little too soon. That's it. This is real. This is live, There's no editing here. It's just, it is what it is. Hey, there it is. See you guys in the next one.